got a license to talk.
Shocking. Positively shocking.
And the words are for your ears only.
I think you got the point.
Welcome to The Words Are Not Enough.
On episode 9 of The Words Are Not Enough, Denis Villeneuve is out as Bond 25's director. Will Christoph Waltz reprise his role as Blofeld? And MGM works out a new distribution deal. Also, we discuss our Bond rankings. All this and more coming up right now.
Yeah, baby! Yeah.
What is up, everyone, and welcome back to The Words Are Not Enough. I am Griffin, 008 Schiller, your host, and I am joined by my lovely co-host...
Brody 005 Cervelli. How's it going?
There we go.
It's been a little while.
There we go. I'm feeling a little weird right now because I just ate 2 whole medium pizzas, so there's there's that. Woohoo!
Oh my god, that's almost impressive.
It is. I'm pretty full. I I'll probably have to visit the facilities later on. But. I was just really hungry, man, and I had to eat some pizza.
No, sometimes the urge comes over you. You just got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, and what are you gonna do? I managed to do it. But anyways, how are you? How was your eating habits? I guess
they've been pretty normal. I guess I consistently eat around 5:30, so that's nice. And I don't eat 2 whole pizzas, so that's also nice. I guess.
Right. So you're not like. Completely
I haven't gorged myself
screwed.
in a while, yeah.
Yeah.
We were just talking about this before we started recording. My, I guess, in terms of media consumption for the last 2 weeks since we were last on, I guess. Or I guess last week we had the Live and Let Die episode. But,
Right. We were supposed to do an episode last week, but Brody fucked it up. That was all your fault.
It's absolutely true. It was all me. But
so you can yell at him.
Yes, absolutely. Take all your frustrations out on me. I can take it. But yeah, my media consumption has been primarily leading up to Justice League, and we were just talking about that.
So much, man.
There's so much stuff going on there. So that's pretty much been where my head has been at. But yeah, other than that, and then school, obviously.
It'll be it'll be a nice distraction from that to just talk about James Bond.
Yes,
to be honest with
Actually,
you,
yeah, no one that we know of in the Bond franchise has been accused of sexual harassment yet. So,
well, yeah, that we know of thus far.
I'm sure there's something going on, but I mean,
yeah.
We don't have to think about that for now. Is my point. We don't have to.
Right. Thank God.
We can.
Oh dear.
Escape.
But yes. Anyways, so well, that's good. We got kind of a short show for you guys this week. There wasn't a whole lot. We're carrying over some of the topics from last week that we weren't able to discuss because we felt that
the big ones anyway. Yeah.
We should discuss them. And then there wasn't a whole lot that popped up this week, so we're really just going to have our Tomorrow Never Lies segment, our news segment, and then our discussion segment, Shaken But Heard. There wasn't enough little nuggets to throw in Q Branch, so...
yeah, some stuff about, like, the Pierce Brosnan screen test for, the Living Daylights.
Right, which, that's, if you haven't... Go look into that stuff for yourselves. I mean, honestly, it was good stuff, but I think for the show, we wanted to spend more time discussing on some topics.
Yeah,
so.
follow like people like Pierce Brosnan on Twitter, and you'll see all that sort of stuff on the reg.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, absolutely.
Also discussing that kind of stuff. There is some stuff because there's also some stuff to do with the James Bond: The Body, that comic book. That would be
the one that's coming out this month, right?
Yeah, that would have been interesting to discuss. But just like the screen test, it was more of a visual thing. It was just like looking at some art. And that sort of stuff is hard to describe in a podcast because it'd be just us like looking at it and describing it and then reacting to it. And if you're not looking at it yourself, it's kind of meaningless.
Listen to me react.
Yeah, exactly. Listen to me react to this thing you haven't seen yet. Like, yeah,
right.
So that's primarily the reason Q Branch is pretty barren this week, but
it'll probably be back up next week. But definitely go seek out those stories if you're at all interested in them. But anyways, let's get started with this whole thing. Starting with Tomorrow Never Lies, as always. So the first topic we're going to discuss is something that we've been covering for several months here. We put out a video, I believe, towards the end of September, saying Is Denis Villeneuve going to direct Bond 25? We gave you our thoughts on there. It was pretty, heavily rumored that he was the front runner, that it was looking more and more likely that he was going to direct.
Yeah.
Oh, excuse me. But now we actually have confirmation that he is not going to be doing James Bond. He is not going to be directing Bond 25.
Wow.
And this is coming from a source from the playlist. So in an interview with the playlist, I'll just touch on the playlist just a little bit. In an interview with the playlist, oh God, I can't speak. Denis Villeneuve spoke out about the recent rumors surrounding his involvement in Bond 25. He said the following. The thing is, I don't know about that, but listen, Daniel Craig is a very inspiring actor, and I had some contact, and the thing is that I'm busy right now doing Dune. But I will say, to have the privilege to work with him, it would be a dream. I would love to work with Daniel, and a Bond movie, for me, would be a treat. It's a matter of timing, I guess. So there you have it, guys.
There it is.
He's basically saying, the time frame for which they're looking to put together Bond 25. He's going to be hard at work on Dune, which I'm very much looking forward to see. But it basically just puts to rest the fact that he will not be the director of Bond 25.
There it
Maybe
is.
we'll get Jan Demange now. I don't know. But anyways, quick little plug here. I actually do short little social media style videos for the playlist, so this is my movie news outlet that broke the story. So I'm very happy to be a member of the team. Go definitely go check out the interview on the playlist, because it was like a podcast style interview. It was I forget the guy's name who was conducting the interview, but it was an interview with Denis. So definitely go seek that out. Nice little publicity for them. But anyways, Brody, give me your thoughts on the story. Let me hear what you have to say.
I mean, this pretty much ties into what we were speculating in previous episodes, where he is so busy that it would be kind of hard to imagine him having the time to do this. So this kind of makes sense.
Right.
It's a shame, obviously, because he's such a great director, and he was someone that I really would have liked to have seen doing this.
And not just doing a Bond film, but doing a Daniel Craig Bond film. I just feel like his aesthetic and his vision just really aligned
gelled,
with what was already established with Daniel Craig.
No, for sure. And I think it's interesting that they he says like he had some contact with them, so he was in like the discussion. So as for like some of those rumors we heard where like they said like, oh, Daniel Craig wants Denis Villeneuve and all that sort of stuff, there may still have been some credence to that stuff. He may have wanted him, and they just weren't able to get him. Which is, again, like that's just how this whole thing works. Every movie you see probably went through 5 or 6 different like sort of stars or directors or whatever before production even started. Like just the studio sort of hunting for talent, So this is all pretty run up. Like this is nothing shocking. But it is a shame that it is someone as high profile as Denis Villeneuve not having the time, but I am excited to see him do something else eventually. Like even if it won't be Daniel Craig.
For sure. I think what he's going to do with Dune is going to be very much like what he did with Blade Runner. He's going to revive a cult classic. It's probably going to be a great movie. It's just a matter of how well will it do at the box office.
Right. He might have. Yeah. It might have. Now might have been the right time to jump on Bond, because it would have been at least guaranteed.
That's what kind of. Right.
Not guaranteed critical, but I mean, Denis sort of guarantees critical acclaim. But it would have been guaranteed financial success anyway. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it would have been a nice bounce back from
put
Blade Runner.
Put a nice like financial victory under his belt, so that the studios aren't afraid to still give him riskier projects like Blade Runner or
for sure. And it really is a shame that Blade Runner hasn't done as well as it should have, because it's a tremendous film, absolutely breathtaking. This is not a sci-fi show by any means, but if you have not seen Blade Runner 2049, I very much encourage you to go check it out. It's an incredible film, especially if you want to get a feel for Denis' work in sci-fi and cyberpunk and stuff like that. It's really, really quite good. It's also, got a little bit of noir thrown in there, a little bit of spy elements, I guess.
It's very contemplative. So that's like if you're looking for something like a little meatier in your media diet. Go right ahead.
Yeah,
if you haven't
absolutely.
already, of course.
But you know, at least we can put this story to bed. No more Denis Villeneuve rumors, unless they
Denis
somehow
never
magically
lies.
rope
It's
him back
over.
in.
Yeah.
It is over. You know, tomorrow never lies, and it is. We are not lying. It's over. He is not doing Bond 25.
Shut down the rumor mill. That means that what this means. This means next week, the Nolan rumor mill will be firing on all gaskets. It'll be
it probably
absolute
will be
madness.
Yeah.
It'll just be like every single outlet in the world will be saying like Christopher Nolan crossed his legs right to left, which means he's directing Bond. Like.
It's a madhouse, man.
Absolute madhouse.
Oh gosh.
Christ.
All right. So moving on to our next story here. Now this is one that we missed a couple weeks back. One, we were doing the Live and Let Die special, and then two, we didn't record a regular show last week.
Yep.
But we wanted to touch on this because this is actually pretty huge and very, very disappointing. So anyways, speaking on the red carpet at Festa del Cinema di Roma, Christoph Waltz. I actually was about to say Rome, but then I realized it was so I was like Roma. And it kind of just ended up being
the pasta sauce.
Oh god, it kind of worked out for the best.
Really?
Anyways, Christoph Waltz confirmed to Italian movie news site Talky Movie.
Wow.
I'm so sorry.
You mean Talky Movie?
We are assholes. This is just great. I love the name of that site. That's awesome. But anyways, that he would not be coming back for Bond 25 to reprise the role of Blofeld, and he said the following. No, I'm sorry. I'm really sad, but that's the tradition that there is a new name. Sorry, I would have liked to. That's it. That's all he said. Anyways, it was previously understood that Waltz had an option to return to a future Bond film, and these latest comments contradict comments the actor has made in the past, stating he would only return if Craig was still in the lead role. So this is interesting on a couple of different things. One, who are they going to cast as Blofeld now that Waltz isn't there? And two, it's very upsetting and discouraging that he is not going to be reprising his role as Blofeld, because I actually thought that there was a lot of room to further his portrayal of the character. Because when we meet Blofeld at the end of Spectre, he's got a lot of Blofeld elements to him, but it's not like he's fully reached the Blofeld that we
Blofeld
know.
Begins,
so I thought that yeah, exactly. So it was like before he got the scar, before like all that stuff. So it was kind of like a little bit of a origin. I don't want to say origin just because it's not an origin, but it was like a pre-Blofeld before Blofeld. Yeah, introduction. We'll go with that. And so I was really curious to see how they were going to take that character in the next film, like what they were going to do with him. And now we're not going to get it. I mean, I'm sure there will still be room for the character to be developed more, just with a different actor. But I wanted to see what Waltz could fully bring to the character when he's just full out Blofeld. And actually, I mean, and I know you're going to echo me on this one. I was a fan of Christoph Waltz's portrayal. I thought that he was great. He was definitely underused in the movie. I think I would have liked to seen him a little bit more, but the scenes that he was in, he was fantastic. I thoroughly enjoyed him, and it's very upsetting to know that he's not going to return in the next film. You know, especially since Sam Mendes isn't going to be at the helm anymore, so we'd get a new director coming in. Let's see what he would do with the character and Waltz's portrayal to match that. And man, I can't express how disappointed I am by that. I know you feel the same, Brody. So go ahead, let me hear your thoughts.
This is one of the worst things I have heard coming out of the movie. It bums me out big time. Like, this is all I wanted. When I heard they were bringing Blofeld back, I was so excited. Well, we didn't hear they were bringing Blofeld back. When I heard they were bringing Spectre back, I obviously assumed Blofeld was going to be in it. And then when they revealed it was Blofeld in Spectre, I was like, oh shit. Like, there's so many places you can go with this character, and there's so many places you can go with this, like, sort of organization and all this sort of stuff. And stuff we never really got to do in like the early Connery films because they never kept an actor, you know what I mean?
Sure, they was just, and now they're repeating the same mistakes.
And then it's like he mentions that tradition of like recasting.
Yeah,
that's I hope they're not treating that like a tradition, because no one is fond of that tradition. That is, like, no one likes the fact that that's the case, I would say.
No, not at all.
And so I know it's just a bummer, because this could mean two things, right? This could mean they're taking Blofeld in a new direction because people were lukewarm to Christoph Waltz, Inspector, which, first of all, I don't understand. Like, I wouldn't even say he was underused. I would say he was minimally used, which I think that's fair. The distinction, because like that sounds like a distinction without a difference, but I would say the distinction is minimally used is still effective. It's just minimal, obviously. Whereas underused is sort of like it was detrimental to the performance that he was used so little. And I don't think it was. I think he was used the right amount for what is essentially an introduction to the character, because like, he was left alive, obviously set up for him to come back.
I just think like a few more scenes with him actually...
I wouldn't have complained, honestly, yeah. And I think the on top of the minimally used aspect of it, I would say Blofeld is such a subdued character. And so obviously Christoph Waltz gave a fairly subdued performance. He had little flourishes, obviously, because he's a great actor and he does, like, he knows how to sort of do that sort of thing.
To it, yeah.
But Blofeld has never been all that eccentric. I mean, he looks eccentric. He has the scar and the bald head and the cat, but he sort of sits in his chair and he talks in a monotone, and then, like, you know what I mean? That's the classic version.
I would say the
anyway.
most eccentric he has been, aside from what Christoph Waltz, and even that was pretty tame, was Telly Savalas.
I mean, I would say Charles Gray was pretty eccentric, but like in a bad way.
Yeah, but I'm sorry, that's not Blofeld. Like, let's be real.
That is fair. Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right.
But it was like,
you're right.
You know,
and I thought Savalas had like a weird sort of whimsicalness to him that was like very like
right. And like Telly Savalas was very, very like calm, but like the way he spoke and like the little
very deliberate
flourishes and subtleties that he threw on. Like with the character, like the way he held his cigarette, you know what I'm saying? He almost looked like he was posing. It was it was just very it was menacing, but it wasn't like it was. See, a lot of people say that they like Donald Pleasance's portrayal of Blofeld the best, and while I understand it because he's the first and he's got like the iconic look, he is just not very interesting.
No, I agree. Like, I completely agree. I think he's visually interesting, but that's about it. Yeah,
he doesn't match it. Right.
And no, Telly Savalas before Christoph Waltz was my favorite.
Agreed.
And I think even to an extent, like they're both pretty close in terms of my opinion for different reasons. So yeah, I think coming off of something like Silva, like a character like Silva with such a very like scenery chewing performance from
I mean super colorful, super eccentric.
From
Javier Bardem.
Javier Bardem, that's right. And coming off of that, I can see why some audiences are like, oh, this is a little tame. But that's just the character. So that's what to get back to my main point. I'm worried that no, that was my own fault. I went on a tangent there, but I'm worried they might be accidentally, not accidentally, but like they might be misinterpreting audience reactions to the character and then reactively sort of saying we need to recast Christoph Waltz or change the way we've portrayed this character, which is like I don't agree with that, and I think that would be really a real shame.
Yeah.
Second worry, my bigger worry, honestly, is that they said, well, Spectre didn't land as well as Skyfall or Casino Royale. We're going to drop the whole Blofeld thing altogether. We're not even going to... We're not bringing back Christoph Waltz, but we're not recasting either. It's just going to be a complete standalone, which I think is a terrible way to end Daniel Craig's sort of run, which has emphasized continuity so much. And it also basically exactly repeats the problem that I had with Diamonds Are Forever, which is that they sort of dropped the storyline they were going for, the really interesting storyline they were going for, and just sort of acted like nothing ever happened. And I think that's dumb. I think that's a really stupid way to run a franchise, and I really hope that's not what they're doing. Like, even like going, because since we mentioned DC at the very beginning, people were not crazy about Batman vs. Superman or Suicide Squad, but mainly Batman vs. Superman in terms of like what leads into Justice League. They didn't make Justice League ignore everything that happened in Batman vs Superman, right? That would be stupid.
They kind of adapted.
You can adjust direction without completely ignoring what people thought was problematic or whatever. So I think that's what would happen here if they just completely ignored Spectre and said this is a standalone now. Yes, that is sort of par for the course in terms of this franchise because there are so many standalones, but you very obviously telegraphed that this was going to lead into another story. You had Bond quit the service with this girl, who it's implied he's going to be in a relationship with. You had Blofeld getting arrested, which never happens to a Bond villain, staring Bond down, menacingly. They were very obviously foreshadowing events to come, and if you just drop it, that is so disappointing. And that is this is like, why would you bother? Why did you bother bringing Spectre back? Why did you bother buying the rights? You know what I mean? Only to just use it in one
everything
film
will
and
be
drop
for
it.
Nothing.
Everything will be for nothing, and it's just like, this is such, and it would be such a defeatist attitude, and it would honestly make me even more mad about the critical reception, because I would disagree with most of the critical reception that Spectre got, but it would make me even more mad about it, because like, now you fucked me out of a really great Blofeld story again. And and that's me talking selfishly here, but so I think this is terrible. Either way, hopefully my best case scenario is that Christoph Waltz is saying this because he hasn't heard anything, because they haven't finished the script, and they just haven't reached out to him because obviously they haven't started production yet. So that's my best case scenario.
Right. But if that was the case here, but if that,
go ahead.
It's the way he said the it's the way he said it. He said, "No, I'm sorry, I'm really sad, but that's the tradition that there is a new name."
I honestly don't think it's like, I don't think he's saying that because that's what he's been told or whatever. I think it's like, because the way he says like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm really sad," indicates that he wanted to do another one. And that it wasn't necessarily his choice to walk away from it. It's just that he hasn't been approached. You know what I mean? Like, he didn't.
Well, I hope that's the case. I really do.
I don't think he would say, "I'm sorry, I'm really sad," if he had chosen not to. You know what I mean? He would just say, "Oh, we're parting ways."
What I'm saying is that they have opted not to bring him back.
No. That's pretty much what I think has happened. And I know, but then I guess it could just be that they haven't approached him and he's interpreting it as he's not coming back.
Maybe.
Honestly, because I think that's what isn't that the same thing that Rory Kinnear said 2 weeks ago when he said, "I don't know if I'll be back. I sort of just wait and see every time the new one happens. They reach out."
He hasn't been contacted yet.
Right, and I think
that goes to the. I can't remember. There was like a very vague story. We didn't put it in the notes because there wasn't a whole lot of concrete behind it. But basically, it was saying that the script is not even finished yet. There hasn't been a whole lot of progress made on it.
Honestly, is probably I'm holding out hope that because they haven't finished the script, and they're probably shopping around a lot of different scripts, right? And with the fact that we're trying to court Denis Villeneuve, which maybe Villeneuve had a different vision for the movie that didn't involve Blofeld or Madeline or anything like that. So maybe while they're courting him, they sort of said to Christoph Waltz's people, "Hey, we don't know if you're coming back." And honestly, we don't have a director, so the director is the one who makes the final choice in terms of casting. Right. So without a director, how can you have other than the main character, obviously, which is obviously a producer's decision in this case. A lot of the ancillary cast are not set in stone, and so because if they do end up going with Yann Damage, what we heard about Yann Damage's story very much sounded like it involved Blofeld. So
it seemed like he was a pretty key component to that story. Yeah,
so I think now maybe that Denis out of the running, and that we are still shopping around scripts and all that sort of stuff. Part of me wants to believe, and this may be just wish fulfillment, willful thinking, but I don't 100% think this means he won't be back. I just think, as it stands now, he doesn't know if he's coming back.
And I would like to think that. I think that yes, that is a possibility, but also that they're just going to recast. I don't know. I don't think they'll get rid of the character, but I think they'll take that they'll take from audiences and critics that they didn't like the portrayal of Blofeld, so they will replace him with someone else.
But I mean, like, the part of me is like, part of me doesn't want to believe that that's like that they would do that as the Broccolis would do that. Michael G. Wilson and Barbara Broccoli would do that just because. I mean, I don't know. Maybe they would. I have no idea. I just like
I mean, you know, it's all
stuff
just
you're seeing from like I mean, this is like such a flimsy justification for this, but like all of the Bond social media doesn't seem to be distancing itself from Christoph Waltz, which you would assume they would be doing if they were trying to get their brand away from that.
Well, not at all.
That interpretation.
If you're part of the franchise, they're gonna like Bond is
part
like
of the
historically,
franchise, but it's like, at the same time, it's like you're not going to actively show behind the scene photographs of Christoph Waltz and like constantly reference Blofeld, his Blofeld. I don't think you would do that if you were planning to replace him. You know what I mean? That would just be a little. It'd be like if the Marvel Facebook page started sharing photos of Edward Norton and saying like, "Happy birthday, Edward Norton! You're our Hulk," and it's like, not really,
right? But the Bond franchise, the Bond franchise does have a reverence and respect for past actors who have appeared in their films.
No,
like
for
they
sure,
do.
But it's the most recent film, and if they're planning to recast that specific character in the sequel to that film, I feel like that's a little more dicey than saying like happy birthday Charles Gray. You know what I mean? Like,
right. I guess maybe.
So and then again, I admit that's a flimsy, but I just don't see. I can't see the franchise distancing itself from an actor that everyone involved seemed to like working with, and like Christoph Waltz seemed to, unless next week Christoph Waltz gets accused of sexual harassment on set, in which case. That could be why.
Yeah, then that's not happening. Yeah,
but I shouldn't have said that. That sounds slanderous almost. But as a joke. But yeah. So I don't see why they would do that. But maybe they will, and maybe they are.
Right. I mean, it's all speculation. We'll find out sooner or later. But anyways, moving on to the next topic here. So. This has to do with the Bond distribution rights, all that good stuff. Exciting. So apparently, this is actually good news.
Yeah.
MGM and Annapurna Pictures have formed a new joint venture for theatrical distribution in the U.S. With MGM moving back into distribution, it seems like the natural setup to distribute the next Bond film. So this is very promising. One, because I think Annapurna is a great company. Their films usually are... they're smaller scale, but they're, for the most part, I think that they've been producing quality films. And obviously MGM is involved, so if MGM's involved some sort of way, you would be led to believe that it's going to involve Bond somehow. So I think that this is, naturally it just makes sense. They're going to, form a joint venture distribution. That's how MGM is going to keep the Bond rights. And this is just great news all around because we get to see that lion at the beginning of the Bond films from now on.
Thank God. I'm so sick of losing logos at the beginning of my films.
I know. It kills me. But first it was Star Wars.
Yeah, I know,
right? No, first it was the Paramount Marvel thing.
That's true, yeah. It was Paramount.
And then it was Star Wars.
And we're losing Paramount in front of Indiana Jones when that ends up coming out.
Oh, that's not going to feel right.
Which is actually going to be sickening because they always crossfade between the logo and like a mountain. So...
Yeah, now it's going to be the castle. They're gonna crossfade the castle.
I would actually vomit in my mouth if I did that.
I would too. But anyways, getting back to this story, what are your thoughts on it?
This is great. This is actually really, really good because, like, I think, especially with like going back to that story about the Disney 20th Century Fox possible merger that we alluded to earlier. Did we? Was that before the podcast? I can't remember. But that is a thing that is possibly happening. And given like the general tumultuous nature of the way the studios are operating right now, it's nice that Bond isn't going to be involved in any of that because Lord knows studio issues have held these films back for long enough. So this is great because I mean, if MGM can distribute itself, then we're basically on the home stretch. Like this is as long as they don't go bankrupt again, we're good.
Right.
Yeah, no, this is great. I love the idea of them having creative control over, because MGM's been pretty great about letting Eon do its thing, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, the MGM doesn't have a whole lot of grounds to really,
right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
nix them. This is this is the only thing getting them money, like, realistically, Yeah,
no, I completely agree. So Sony was kind of notorious for having a lot of negative input in the Bond production, right? Especially what we saw with the leaks with Spectre, that there was just a lot of interference. So, and then obviously other studios have had these kind of dramas in the past, like Warner Brothers with their DC films, Disney with the Marvel films, all these other studios, Universal with their monster movies or whatever the fuck they're doing. There's a lot of these big studios, because they have so much money riding on these properties, there is a lot of, I guess, incentive for them to interfere. And so wherever Bond ended up, it may have been at risk of having, because it is such a cash cow, there would have been a lot of risk of having equal levels, or if not worse levels of interference from whatever studio ended up, picking it up.
Yeah.
But with MGM and Annapurna, I think I'm saying that right.
Yeah, Annapurna.
That lends a little bit more autonomy to Eon to just sort of run the show, because MGM has been very good about this so far. Obviously they have they're a studio, they're going to have a little bit of input, rightfully so.
Right, but like I mentioned before, it's like what else is making them money?
Right, exactly. And so I think letting the Eon do what Eon does best has worked for them in the past, so I think that's going to continue. This is great. This is really great, because it means we're not going to get new chefs in the kitchen. These are existing chefs who have already know their way around the kitchen, you know what I mean? So there's not going to be any teething problems with this.
You might have a few new people from Annapurna, but if it's a joint deal with MGM and Annapurna,
no, for sure. But I think given Annapurna's like sort of track record, they sort of do smaller films, so I think their input will be a little more respectful. Who knows? Maybe not. But
I think you're spot. Yeah, I think you're dead on. Yeah.
And so I think in general, this is great. The new people coming on board are used to working on smaller projects, so they have more of an intimate sort of work, ethic. And MGM has already been involved in the Bond films for so long that it's not like it's going to be jarring when new people come on board. So this is great.
Sure. Yeah.
If anything, this is taking people and again, this isn't confirmed as a distribution deal for Bond that we're talking about, like it could be, but it's not 100% confirmed yet. But I mean, making a deal like this sort of sets itself up to be involved with Bond, right? Like it just makes sense. So this is great. If anything, this is taking a lot of harmful interference from like Sony out of the picture, which I couldn't be happier about. I was so worried that we don't re-sign with Sony, and I was like, just get off that sinking ship.
And the other thing is we don't have to worry about like Amazon or Apple, getting involved now, and Bond being like distributed on like their streaming services or whatever. Yeah. Oh, actually, I just had a funny thought going back to the Christoph Waltz thing, and keeping things very topical as we have done this episode. If Sony had maintained distribution rights, maybe Sony would have hired Christopher Plummer as Blofeld and then digitally replaced Christoph Waltz in Spectre with Christopher Plummer. Oh my god! Because the Sony seems to like that's just becoming the new joke now. Replace everything with Christopher Plummer. Yeah, I mean, actually, come to think of it, Christopher Plummer wouldn't be terrible as Blofeld. He's a little old, but he'd be pretty cool. He's a little old, but he's definitely like dramatic and Shakespearean. Sure. So that's cool. Right. But so that's my thoughts on that. What about you, Griffin? You got any other thoughts on that? Yeah, I've already said I've already said my thoughts. I think it's a great deal. As long as MGM can keep a hand on the wheel, I'm pretty happy. And like you said, I think with Annapurna's track record, I think this really it means that there's going to be less creative interference from the distribution studios, and Eon will basically maintain creative control, and we'll be good. We'll be good.
Hell
so if
yeah.
this actually does happen, because this is not confirmed, but it is heavily rumored, so let's hope it actually pans out. All right, so moving on to our second to last story here. It has to do with Monica Bellucci. We talked about her a couple weeks ago, so it's coming back around. So this past Tuesday evening in Rome, where she was feted with the Verna Lisi Lifetime Achievement Award, Bellucci smiled at reporters who asked her to comment on the rumors of her reappearing in Bond 25. She basically just smiled and said, "I can't say anything."
Ooh,
very
cheeky.
cryptic.
Yeah,
very cryptic. So what do you think? Is this looking like she's going to be in it? I mean, we know Craig was championing for her to be in the film, as we mentioned the last time we talked about it. But
I mean, last time we talked about it, like if people are long-time listeners, they would have heard last time I was very into this idea. And this reaction makes me kind of giddy. This is so nice, especially coming off of that Christoph Waltz story, which is so negative and sad. This is so nice.
Yeah, this is a nice little change of pace.
She seems like she's having fun with it. She's like enjoying the rumor mill a little bit. I don't know why
she's completely fucking with everyone. She's really not going to be in the movie.
I mean, maybe honestly, it's probably a good publicity bump for her every time her name comes up associated with Bond. But if it is true, why would if it's not true, why would she say I can't say anything other than for the publicity?
Right. Which I don't think that she would do.
Right. I don't think she's in that place in her career where she's desperate for attention. But
no, not at all.
And so I think I don't know why she would say I can't say anything unless they were at least in talks. It's similar to how Denis Villeneuve, back before he sort of had firmly landed on no, was saying, well, who knows? I'd love to do one. You know what I mean?
Right.
Right. And then when we found out he was saying that because he's in negotiations. So,
sure.
I mean, maybe she's in negotiations. Maybe she's confirmed and she can't say anything. Who knows?
Yeah, I would bet money that she's probably going to appear in Bond 25. And once again, that would go along with the connective tissue of the Craig films.
I think that's why I want this to happen so much. I think because you can't bring Monica Bellucci back and not bring Spectre and Blofeld back because they're her whole character revolves
exactly.
around it,
You're 100% on that one. I feel like she probably will be back. What size of a role she will have is definitely still up for debate.
Of course, yeah.
Will she be the new Bond girl? Maybe. That's what Craig kind of wants.
I'm with you there, Craig.
I feel like he'll get just about whatever he wants unless they're off doing Dune. I would probably...
Sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
It was a random thought, but imagine if the reason Daniel Craig was so big on those sci-fi ideas was because he was trying to impress Denis Villeneuve. And he's like, we can do sci-fi, come to us. Don't forget about Dune. We can do spaceships.
Yeah, it's like, we'll do Dune, but with James Bond.
Jesus Christ.
It would be too much. But, initially I wasn't too crazy on the idea of Monica Bellucci coming back. I feel like,
that's fair.
I don't know. It just like, Anyways, if you want to hear my full thoughts on it, you can go back and listen to the previous episode. But I just I wasn't crazy on it. I wanted more of the focus to be on Madeline and then Craig getting revenge on the death of Madeline, not necessarily bringing a new girl into the fold. But seeing as Monica Bellucci's character does have a past with Spectre, and they're the reason her husband is dead, I guess not really. James Bond killed him, but he was working with Spectre, so I guess he was kind of corrupt in that regard. But anyways,
yeah,
and she was going to be killed by them. But she has a history with them. Craig's trying to get revenge. I could see a similar thing we mentioned last time we talked about, like a Camille and James Bond kind of thing.
Yeah,
I could see them teaming up a little bit there.
What a dream.
But yeah, I've kind of warmed up to this idea, and I'd be curious to see what they do with her character if they do in fact bring her back, which it's looking like she'll be back in some form. I can't tell you how big of a role, but it looks like she'll be back. But anyways, very interesting stuff here. So Moving on to the final story here. It's actually a little bit of sad news. We have a death in the Bond family this week. So Bond girl Karen Dorr, who was in You Only Live Twice, she played Helga Brandt, who was the redheaded. She was one of the henchmen to Blofeld in the film, and I'm sure you remember who she was in the movie. She was a pretty prominent figure.
Yeah, she had she had the X-Acto knife that she threatened Bond with.
Right, and she was
surgeon's scalpel or something. Yeah.
Yes, and she got dropped into the into Blofeld's pool of piranhas. So, right. Anyways, very sad news. She passed away at a nursing home in Munich at the age of 79. Her son told Bild, a newspaper. She was a German film star, though. You know, she was a big name over there in Germany, and while she is very prominently remembered from having a very substantial role in You Only Live Twice, she also starred in the Alfred Hitchcock movie Topaz. So if you're looking to see her in something else other than Bond, maybe go check out that movie, because Alfred Hitchcock really can do no wrong. But anyways, she initially found fame in Germany for acting in dozens of German films throughout the 50s and 60s. She passed away after suffering a heavy fall last year, from which she was unable to recover, unfortunately.
That's so sad.
She was married 3 times, most recently to American stuntman and actor George Robotham, who died in 2007. And yeah, it's just it's very sad. You know, I think she left an impact on the Bond franchise. She definitely was great in You Only Live Twice, and if you've never seen Topaz, definitely check it out. Great Alfred Hitchcock movie. She's great in that. She's terrific in that film as well. So, just it's always sad when we cover these stories about these actors or actresses passing away who we remember from the franchises that we hold dear to us. So, Brody, any thoughts on Karen Dorr?
Not too much. I have made in the past it known that I'm not a huge fan of her character in the movie.
Sure.
But that's nothing to do with Karen Dorr whatsoever.
No, not at all.
She was very, very... Yeah, she seemed like a lot... She had a good presence in the movie. And it is obviously a shame. She passed away so young, honestly. Not
79,
so young, but 79 is fairly young today in this day and age. I
would say so, yeah.
And so, yeah, I know it is upsetting. My thoughts go out to her family and everyone who survived her. That is a shame.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. But anyways, the Dorr family, we hope that you guys are we'll get through this, and we remember Karen Dorr.
Yeah, thank you for your contribution to this wonderful franchise, Karen.
Yes, there we go. So, this is where we would.
I don't know.
What?
I'm looking at the name now. Is it Karen or Karen?
Karen. I say Karen. I could be saying it wrong. Who knows? I'm awful with names. But anyways, so from at this point in the show, usually we move in the Q branch, and then usually we move in the brother from Langley. We are scrapping those segments this week because there is absolutely nothing to discuss in regards to them, and we're moving straight into Shaken But Heard.
Yes.
And so basically...
Exciting. My kind of week.
We decided to do our Bond rankings. We're gonna rank our who we feel are the best James Bond actors. So all the actors who have ever played James Bond, we're gonna rank them from worst to best, starting with the worst, going to the best. And yeah, Brody, do you want to how do you want to do this whole shindig?
I don't know. I'm just looking at the notes. Just a little insight to the behind the scenes for everyone listening. I wrote freeform discussion. So I think freeform discussion, however you see fit to do that.
Freeform discussion.
Freeform discussion. So I guess we just sort of there's only 6, so it's not too hard. Would you like to start?
Let's just go up the line then. Starting with your worst. Going to your best.
Okay. Well, do I just say the one or?
Yeah. I mean, I already know who it is. I disagree with you, but yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So my number 6, I guess, my last place is, and I should preface this by saying I love all of the actors who played Bond.
Same. I will say that too.
Near and dear to my heart, and I think they all did good work, and Yeah, they all have like a sentimental attachment to all of them and the films they're in. So, with that said, I got to go with George Lazenby, the Australian Bond. I've got to do it. And it's not all his fault. He only had one film to sort of flex his muscles and show what he had, and obviously, I'm sure he would have gotten better and more. I would have been more endeared to his portrayal with time. But I can't mark him on a hypothetical. You know what I mean? I've only have the one film he did, and the one film he did he was good in it, but I don't think he was the reason it was good. I think give George Lazenby Diamonds Are Forever, and it becomes like I feel like there's nothing redeemable about it. You know what I mean? I don't think George Lazenby had the charisma at the time in his performance, because he seems like a very charismatic guy in real life, especially after watching Becoming Bond.
Bond, yeah.
But given his performance, it was a little lacking, and it kind of relied a lot on the immense talent he was working with, like with Diane Rigg and Telly Savalas. And just like the cast around him was so phenomenal that I think part of his performance, because I mean, part of his performance is dubbed, like all the stuff where he is Sir Hillary at his Korea, that is dubbed because he couldn't do a British accent. And so they're like. Yeah, so I mean, like part of his performance, all these factors sort of contribute to why I feel like he's great, but he's not the reason his film is great. His film sort of supports him rather than the other way around. And I think that's just, I don't know, he's just the weakest. He's not bad, he's just the weakest of all of them. So yeah, and again, much love, and he is the Australian Bond, so I have a special affinity to him, but sorry, George, Laz, you lost. And yeah.
Right. And, initially I would disagree with you on that because I actually found his portrayal of Bond to be quite good. It was borrowing from Connery while still being his own. And I thought, which is cool. As his first, for sure, I think, absolutely, he was an incredibly physical Bond. He had a great physical presence on screen. It was his first outing, so I do have to cut him some slack there. But ultimately, I do agree. I think George Lazenby, after thinking about it a little bit, George Lazenby is the... I wouldn't say weakest, but he is number 6 on my list, purely for the fact that he only was in a one film, and it wasn't a performance that blew me away. It was just, I happen to think it was really good, and I think he would have, gone on to be one of the greats had he done more films, but he only did the one film, and it was there were definitely some hit or miss moments there with his character.
I think the most comparable sort of moment. I was just sorry to interrupt you. Like, I think the most comparable comparison would be Casino Royale. I think you look at when you compare, like they're similar, sort of obviously thematically very similar stories in some respects.
Right.
But and they were both the first that each actor did. But and they're both really great movies with really great scripts, and their foundation is solid. But George Lazenby is sort of like, he's okay in it, whereas Daniel Craig is phenomenal in a phenomenal movie, whereas George Lazenby is okay in a phenomenal movie. You know what I mean? So I think
for sure.
When you sort of look at it like that, I think
it's a little tricky because the guy wasn't an actor, so like I feel like there's some sort of handicapped with him as far as the ranking goes.
Oh my god.
I don't know. I tend to cut him a little bit more slack than most people, just because I was actually truly impressed with the performance he did give, given all of the circumstances. But you did say something that I think is ultimately right, is that he is not the reason the film is great. The film is great because of the script and the story they're telling, and he contributes to that in a very positive manner. But it's the story ultimately that I think so good, and the way they decided to tell it was perfect.
Majesty's is good in spite of him, not because of him, and I say that a lot. And when I say in spite of him, it makes it sound negative, but it's not negative. It's just
no.
It's just a fact.
No, I understand if people were to have him higher. I feel like it's kind of common to have him towards the bottom because he only did the one movie.
For sure, yeah.
But But yeah, that's nothing. That's no knock on Lazenby at all. You should definitely go check out Becoming Bond, the documentary. We mentioned that probably every time we do this show.
Honestly, gushing about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's really fantastic, and especially if you want to get to know the guy who only did one Bond film, it's a very interesting, wacky story. So I think it's actually coming out on Blu-ray or DVD sometime soon if it's not out already. So definitely go check it out if you don't have a Hulu subscription. So do it. Go do it. All right, Brody, what's your number 5? Who's coming in at 5?
My number 5, and this is where we're going to diverge our lists a little bit. And my number 5 is Pierce Brosnan.
Oh, no! No, I love Pierce.
And I love Pierce, too, because Pierce is my first Bond. He's a really good actor. And I think his performances got stronger as his time went along, even though the films sort of got a little weaker.
Right. He had he had a very interesting situation. It was like the reverse Roger Moore, where like as he got older, then the movies got worse. He he blew me away in some scenes.
I'd love to see a graph of like, because it'd be like there'd be just a very interesting divergence of lines.
Right.
But the reason he is here, and I guess the obvious pick is Roger Moore, because his films are a little more of their time, a little dated, and I think unless you love Roger Moore, people generally put him lower.
Well, because I know where you're going with that. You're saying, judge the acting, not necessarily the films.
No, not so much that. The point I'm getting at is the reason he's low is because. And I'll get more into this when I get to Roger Moore, but to me, Pierce Brosnan is great, and he's iconic, and I love him as James Bond. I love him as James Bond. He is my James Bond. But when I think about it in terms of like quality, I guess, he didn't really bring anything new to the role. He sort of just refined things that previous actors already did. So like he took a bit of that Roger Moore silliness, and he took a bit of like the levity, and he took a little bit of the Sean Connery suaveness, and he took a little bit like in certain instances he took a bit of the Dalton brutality, and he just sort of made a mix, and it's fine. It's a very, very, very good mix, and I think the reason why he comes across as being like the Bond, other than the fact that most people our age grew up with him, I think a lot of people view him as the Bond because he does meld a lot of these classic sort of Bondian elements together very well, but by doing so, his Bond is very indistinct compared to the other Bonds. You know what I mean? To me, anyway. And so, as much as I love him, I think there's nothing that stands out as like, oh, that's a Pierce Brosnanism. You know what I mean?
Right.
Whereas, like, you watch a Roger Moore movie and it's like, oh, that's a Roger Moore Bond thing, or that's a Sean Connery Bond thing, or that's a Daniel Craig Bond thing. You know what I mean? With Sean Connery, with Pierce Brosnan, unless dual wielding machine guns is a Pierce Brosnanism, which he does do a lot.
He does, yeah. He likes that akimbo.
Yeah, so I think other than like stuff like that, there's nothing that like particularly goes, oh, that's exactly like a hallmark of Pierce Brosnan's tenure. And other people may not value that as much as I do, but for me, I love enjoying the different things all the different Bonds have to bring to the role, and he just didn't bring enough new for me to sort of latch onto as much, other than the fact that he is my first and my first exposure to the character.
I understand that. I think what Brosnan was able to do really well is I think that there's a lot more of Pierce Brosnan in his portrayal of Bond than people give him credit for. Like, there's a lot of his own suave, kind of cool personality in there that people would initially think.
I think people would agree with you, honestly. I think I'm in the minority when it comes to this, because he is beloved, and again, I'm one of those people who loves him. I just I think people would agree with you that there is something magical about him.
Well, I know the other thing that people tend to say is he's very soft. He's very he's not like badass or any way. And sure, he's not the most physical Bond. I wouldn't go as far as to call him soft. I think he's very something that I like that he did is he was very I would actually go as far as to say that as he was probably the smoothest with the ladies. Like Sean Connery was the ladies man, like hands down, and you know, you'll see it by far his place on the list, but he had like a very forceful way with them, you know, it was very like 60s kind of way with the women, whereas you look at Pierce Brosnan, he was almost like, you know, like a modern day, like he was a modern day lady killer, I guess is what you could say, and like it was a very cool, slick, and
you're
like
right, yeah. No, I totally agree. I think if you look at graphs, I saw like a graph that like sort of weighs like the kills to drinks to like women bedded of each actor, and I think Pierce Brosnan. I think other than drinking, which he's beaten by Daniel Craig, I think Pierce Brosnan...
well, that's... Yes.
I think Pierce Brosnan, even though he only did 4 films, managed to have sex with and murder more people than every other Bond. And I think that it's very 90s that he is, like, excessive in that way. And I think that's part of what, you know, gives him a trademark, you know? The thing that you mentioned, which I don't think is the case with some of these other actors, is Pierce Brosnan continuously got better as his tenure went on. Absolutely.
Whereas I think some of the other actors, they were even like, oh yeah, hell yeah, first couple films, and then they were like, fuck it, I'm just doing this for a paycheck. That shows you the care that Brosnan actually had, and the respect Brosnan had for the franchise, and him, you know, not wanting to go, because he didn't want to leave the franchise after Die Another Day. He wanted to do it again. Yeah. Unfortunately, they had to reboot it because the movie was just god awful. But all that aside, I do think Brosnan was actually pretty good in that movie. I liked a lot of what he brought to it.
I think his best performance is in that movie. It's just the movie sort of lets him down. I think if they had taken the more, because like, you can sort of see the foundation of his performance in that first half with all the North Korea stuff. You can see he's really If they hadn't given him all the goofy stuff to do, and they really played up on the character stuff that they set up. Yeah, I think it could have been like universally a great performance. But I think even then, I think he's just so comfortable in the role in Diamond of the Day. I nearly call it Diamonds Are Forever, which tells you everything you need to know. But
no, he is. He's very comfortable in the role, for sure. And actually, I've said this before, and I know people think I'm crazy when I say it. I actually think the first half of Die Another Day, before all of the overly outlandish, stupid ice castle stuff happens, I think that's a really solid Bond movie. I think there is a very solid Bond movie in there, sprinkled in with some absurd diamonds and Beyonce Knowles CGIing off of a cliff or whatever, Beyonce Knowles. Oh God, I'm going back to Austin Powers. Sorry, Halle Berry. Austin Powers is screwed by interpretation of that character for life.
I never thought of them as being analogs, but now I think about it, they came up at the same time. I think you're right.
I think they are. Yeah, they were. Oh God, I'm so sorry. Halle Berry CGIing off a cliff, all that stupid stuff.
Oh my God, I forgot about that shot too. That's atrocious.
Right, it's awful. Yeah. All that stuff aside, there's a really solid film in there, and the driving force of that and the reason why it works is because of Pierce Brosnan.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think, well, the thing with Die Another Day, we can get into this in a different podcast, obviously, but
sure, we'll probably discuss it at some point.
Die Another Day is 2 different good Bond films. It's a really
oh my God, yeah.
It's a good ridiculous one and it's a good serious one, and they're just like, they shouldn't be together, but they are.
No, not at all. And it ends up being awful. Yeah, for real. But anyways, taking Die Another Day out of it, I actually think my favorite Brosnan performance, even though he's really good in Die Another Day, is The World Is Not Enough.
He had a lot of material with that one, yeah.
Yeah, he has a little bit more to work with. The Electric King stuff, I think he emotes really well with all of that. And the thing that I love about Pierce Brosnan, and we might as well just get the discussion about him out of the way now, because he's my number 3.
Yeah, this is what I meant by freeform. You see,
it's perfect. Yeah, but the thing that I love about Pierce Brosnan is that you could totally buy him being a spy and like infiltrating places. Like, he has that quick wit, the slickness, the smooth talking to be able to just become a Russian agent or something like that. I'm just using that as an example, but like I truly believed that he was a spy. And the other one that I feel that way about is Daniel Craig, but in a more modern context. Sean Connery, sure. I think Sean Connery walks into a building as James Bond, and you know he's James Bond. That's kind of like my thing when it comes to him. I mean, he's a great spy. He can always do his job, and he'll get the job done. It just won't be in the neatest way possible. I think that Brosnan, on the other hand, will get it done subtly. I mean, it doesn't always happen in the movies, but just like the way he interpreted the character and the way he portrayed the character, everything was more, there was more nuances, more subtleties to his character than people tend to give him credit for, simply because he didn't, you know, he wasn't all out, you know, doing insane action stunts. There are insane action stunts in The World Is Not Enough, and obviously the tank scene in GoldenEye and whatnot, but he was slick, and that's what I loved about Pierce Brosnan, other than, you know, growing up with him.
And I would agree with that. I don't want to make my little tirade before make me sound like I hate Pierce Brosnan. I love Pierce Brosnan to death. I went and saw The Foreigner purely because of him, and I think that's his best performance. And I didn't leave halfway through the movie because of him. Yeah. So it's So I mean, like, I cannot overstate my affection for the guy. It's just. And for his portrayal, it just for me personally, doesn't always land in terms of like just bringing something to the role, but he is still phenomenal. I actually think every time I think of Pierce Brosnan, I don't even think of the movies. I think of Nightfire.
That's really what. See, but that's the other thing, man. He was a cultural, like, he was such a cultural staple as far as like merchandise.
He's the Coca-Cola Bond. He is the Coca-Cola Bond in terms of like his face is everywhere, and he is just a brand in and of himself. Like, even more than Daniel Craig, and Daniel Craig is Bond now. Like,
right? Yeah, I mean, he really. It's funny because you think maybe this is just because we grew up during his tenure as Bond. I think so, because I'm sure Roger Moore and Sean Connery were plastered all over merchandise and stuff.
Connery,
but it was
for sure,
right. But it was just so prominent growing up. It was like you knew Pierce Brosnan was James Bond because he was so marketable as a character. He had that look to him,
and that pretty much all he was James doing. Bond. Whereas Daniel Craig sort of has a career outside of Bond. Pierce Brosnan, other than like Dante's Peak, didn't really have much of a career outside of Bond. So he pretty much always Bond. So
I mean, you could still kind of say that he hasn't had the as much of a career outside of
I'll
Bond.
have you know, Mamma Mia is a fantastic film.
Whoa, we're just waiting for the sequel here.
Hell yeah.
yes, but all right, I can respect that. So Brosnan was your number 5?
Yes, and then your number 4.
Okay, and that was my number 3.
Number 3? Oh my god.
I know. Yeah. It's crazy. Believe me, I'm gonna get a lot. Well, it's kind of it's a little weird because if I could have a tie, it would be between Brosnan and the actor I have in number 4. But ultimately, I just had to go on with my gut on this one. I'll probably get a lot of hate for it. But anyways,
Brosnan would be tied with my number 4 as well, to be honest.
There we go. Okay. Well, anyways, my number 5 is Roger Moore.
No, that's my number 4. So there you go.
Is it okay? Well, then this is just perfect. We're getting the Roger Moore has the opposite effect of Pierce Brosnan, whereas he started off so solid with Live and Let Die. I thought he was terrific in that movie, and it's one of the best Bond performances out of the entire franchise. Unfortunately, it just got worse as it went on. Now, granted, you can make an exception for The Spy Who Loved Me. I thought he was great in that. He did do a good job
in For Your Eyes Only. I think that's his best performance.
I'd put that up there with what do you call it? That's actually on par with The Spy Who Loved Me for me personally. It's great performance, but I'm just saying for the most part, I think if you look at his tenure on the whole, the movies got worse, and I think his performance slightly dipped. He was always like a bright spot in the movies because you always knew that he was having fun while making the movies. Yeah. But I think look at the Man with the Golden Gun. Roger Moore is very bland in that movie, and it's not all his fault.
I mean, he was kind of forced to play a Connery kind of Bond in that one. With some of the stuff he did, so yeah, they didn't let him flex his muscles too much in that one,
right? But then you go to Spy Who Loved Me. He kind of has a little bit more up than Moonraker. He's just I don't know what the fuck is going on in that movie. But it's fun, but he's definitely not James Bond in that movie.
Oh my god.
Anyways, and I think like his tenure, it was a little uneven, and it's kind of hard when you look at Roger Moore and then you see him in Octopussy and you're just like, this is not James Bond. I'm sorry. Like,
yes,
and then it's even worse in A View to a Kill. And does it reflect my opinion about the films? Yes, but I also think that Moore is definitely phoning it in towards the end of his career, especially in A View to a Kill. Yeah. Yeah, I've never been like the biggest fan of like his latter performances. I mean, For Your Eyes Only.
Though. Oh my God.
Okay, fine. I will not say phoning it in. Phoning it in is a little cruel. It's just he's just not. I don't know. It's not for me, I guess. What he did in the latter films. And that's kind of my whole deal with Roger Moore in general is it's not when I think of James Bond, that's not who I think of. And I know people revere this man as Bond. I know that he's their number one at some places, and I get it. And a lot of people grew up watching his movies, whether you were born during the 70s or not. Whether you grew up in the 70s or not. A lot of people grew up watching his movies, and that is their James Bond. For me, I didn't really grow up watching the movies, but two, when I did get around to watching them, I was always just kind of underwhelmed by what he brought to the table. And that's not to say that he did a bad job, because I mean, even some of the other ones I wasn't a fan of, but anyways, I would say on the whole he didn't do a bad job. It's just he's not what people consider Pierce Brosnan a soft Bond. I would actually attribute I would label Roger Moore more of that soft Bond than I would.
I would too. I would too, but I think like I don't know if that's a negative, but yeah, no, go ahead.
Well, it's not a negative. It's just I think when you're playing Bond, you have to play a lot of different sides. You have to be a lady killer, but you have to be a badass. And
that's true, I think I go.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, I think Roger Moore is like, obviously I mentioned before that Pierce Brosnan had sex with more women, but I think Roger Moore was the lover, not a fighter Bond. And he'll say so much. Say as much himself. You know what I mean? Like
he's very reflective of the times.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think because Roger Moore knew he was. I mean, you listen to any interview he's ever done. He knows he's not a physical guy. He knows he's not physically imposing.
No, not at all.
He's sort of, instead of acting like he was, instead of being like an action hero going around kicking people and beating them up, he does have fight scenes, obviously, because it's still an action movie, but he never really leaned into that stuff. And I think his movies are more, you can love them, you can hate them, or you can be indifferent on them, but I think they are better for it because he sort of knew exactly what he was and embraced it, rather than trying to be something that he wasn't. And I think,
he knew he was a funny guy.
He knew he was a funny guy. He knew he had great timing. He knew he had like an interesting, sort of expression. And so he leaned into it. And I think the confidence that comes from that makes his performance so affable. Like, he's just so
I will say that
like,
he definitely was a very confident Bond. In everything he did. And there's a lot of charm that comes from that. Now, obviously Sean Connery is probably the most confident Bond we've ever had, but Roger Moore did a great job of being confident in his own right, in owning scenes, because I'm trying to give some positives to the man, because I do think he did a good job. It's just I wasn't a particular fan of the way of just his Bond.
And fair enough. I totally understand that you're not alone. I think as time has gone on, I think because he is of his time, I think people look back on it a little more critically than
and I think that's the thing. Him more so than probably any other Bond is very dated. Like you could say Connery is dated. I know I keep going back to Connery for things, but it's just, it just kind of happens.
Connery's behavior is a little dated, yeah.
That's the thing. Some of his behavior is very dated, but I think his interpretation has a timeless appeal to it. Whereas like Roger Moore, his behavior was obviously a little dated, but then also I think a lot of the stuff he does, the way he
his
acts,
interpretation,
it is very much a product of the time period, and that's once again, some people really like that, some people don't, and I'm able to appreciate it, but it's not my cup of tea as far as interpretation goes.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, yeah, I love. I'm one of those people who grew up with him, so I mean, I grew up with all of them pretty much, but
sure, yeah.
But in particular, I just enjoyed Roger Moore. Roger Moore was just kind of fun, and he, even if his films were a little less than great sometimes, he was consistently fun, and he always made me laugh by doing something. He'd either like raise an eyebrow, or he'd like make a quip or something. He'd do something, and it would make the whole experience worthwhile. And coming back to like what I was saying about Pierce Brosnan, not to say that Pierce Brosnan doesn't do that, obviously, but Roger Moore brought like where Pierce Brosnan was trying to do everything and trying to be like all of like an amalgamation of all these like very, very popular interpretations of Bond. Roger Moore, where he could have done that, he could have done what George Lazenby did and just like been Sean Connery, but he didn't, and I think I appreciate that more in rewatching it. It doesn't feel like when I watch George Lazenby, I see the moments where he's trying to be like Sean Connery.
Yeah, that's a good point.
When I watch Roger Moore,
agree.
I just see Roger Moore's Bond. I just see like, okay, that's James Bond. That's James Bond as played by Roger Moore, and everything about it is distinct and it's enjoyable. And so for me personally, that's what I value when I watch, what I look for in a Bond actor. And so I'm really glad.
And everything you just said, I 100% agree with you on. It's just how it lands on the spectrum for you.
Right, yeah. That affects my ranking differently than it affects yours. And that's, no, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's all subjectivity, kids.
He was your number 4, right? And that was my number 5.
Yes, yeah.
Okay,
so you go ahead and do your number 4 now, I guess.
Well, I don't know if I want to. What's your number 3?
Should I say?
Wait, no. Where's your okay? Sorry, I'm trying to figure out what we said so far. Both of our 6s were George Lazenby. My number 5 was Roger Moore. Your number 5 was Pierce Brosnan.
Yes. My number 4 was Roger Moore.
My number 4, I haven't given away yet.
No, but your number
4 is Roger Moore.
My number 4 is Roger Moore. Yes.
Okay.
I have not stated
What's your number
top
3?
Sean Connery.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Well, then we're gonna come back to that one. My number 4, and like I said, my number 4 and 3, I would consider a tie. But if we have to do a ranking, might as well do that. My number 4 is Timothy Dalton. Yeah, I know. I just crushed you.
No.
People are gonna kill me because I technically put Pierce Brosnan ahead of Timothy Dalton. I know.
No. I mean, I know. Again, I don't think too many people will kill you, but the Timothy Dalton fans, we Timothy Dalton fans are pretty aggressive, so
you are. So I will probably get shit for that.
We're going to crucify you. Oh my god!
But here's the thing. Here's the thing. I have only recently really come to appreciate Timothy Dalton, so it's more of a who have I had a relationship longer with.
Yeah.
That's why Pierce Brosnan beats him.
Oh my god.
But I don't know. I know where Timothy Dalton is on your list, so do you want to hold off for that and just talk about Sean Connery?
Well, yeah, this is like the freeform like thing I was talking about, I guess. So
sure. Yeah, we'll hold off on Timothy Dalton because I know where he lands on yours. Sean Connery's my number 2. So
yeah, so should I just go ahead and say Sean Connery?
Yeah, let's talk about Sean Connery. Let's do it.
Okay, so my number 4. No, my number 3. Whew, I got the numbers wrong there. My number 3 is Sean Connery, and Sean Connery is like you cannot overstate how important Sean Connery is to the franchise. Yeah. I mean, he really invented the cinematic Bond.
Character.
Yeah, and so I think. And he doesn't get. I don't think he gets enough credit for, especially in his first 2 films. There is a lot of Fleming in those first 2 films, obviously just because of like narratively there's a lot of like beat for beat moments.
Right.
Especially from Rush with Love, but
oh my god, yeah.
So I think like he doesn't get enough credit for that, but on top of that, he is just right out of the gate with Dr. No, he was so confident in a way that I don't think anyone except for Roger Moore, or there's been a couple of others who've been super confident straight out the gate, but I mean, like, most of them are, but he and Roger Moore sort of like immediately just understood what their version of the character was. And like, it's amazing how quickly he sort of like, the first scene you see him in, you suddenly just get everything you need to know about this guy. And he is, again, like there are parts of his performance that are dated, like we mentioned earlier, some of the behaviors, but, and he does do, he is questionable towards women in some instances, and in other instances he is downright just disrespectful and does, like, you know, the wrong thing. And so that stuff is obviously, you have to sort of view it through the lens of the time. Doesn't justify it, but you know what I mean. But his performance is just so enjoyable. He wasn't goofy or funny in any way, but he was fun. You know what I mean? It was almost... Yeah. Whereas Roger Moore is fun to watch because he's funny and he's entertaining. Sean Connery is fun to watch because it's like, what if I were him? You know? Yeah, what if I could walk into a room, any room, and own it? You know what I mean? Like, that is just...
Yeah, that's the thing that I'll say about Sean Connery. If there's anyone on this list that I would want to be, it is Sean Connery's James Bond. He is just the epitome of cool. Yeah. He just oozes that confidence. I mean, we were talking about the the suaveness that kind of like Brosnan had. Connery's the king of smooth. Like, he's suave. He knows how to make an entrance. He knows how to rough up people. Connery did something that I don't know if anyone else has been able to do, and it is be incredibly solid at all of the facets of the character. He's the lady killer. He's the smooth talker. He's the super spy. He's the badass guy. He's an action hero. Like, he is... I mean, he's the alcoholic. Like, you know, it's like all of these elements that are like under the James Bond character umbrella. Sean Connery portrayed flawlessly. It's incredible, actually, to how well he played every single part of the character. You know,
he is honestly, he is honestly perfect. I think the only reason he is third and not number one on my list is because there are just two other versions of the character that I personally prefer, but that does not in any way mean that Sean Connery is lesser than them.
And that's the key thing there. You said versions. It's that interpretation. You know, not necessarily like the like, you know, they're playing all the sides of James Bond well. It's what the character is doing in there that puts them. Yeah, and I totally get that. You know, but just I don't know, what is there to say about Sean? Like, Sean Connery is just he's the man. He's classic, you know, Fleming had one interpretation of the character, and you can see some of that in Connery, but for the most part, that's Sean Connery just doing his own thing on screen.
If
you know,
you need any evidence of just how charismatic and affable this performance is. Ian Fleming hated Sean Connery when he was first cast. He just he just said, like, this, you've hired this brutish Scottish guy. Like, what are you doing? Bond's a gentleman. He's not a brute. All this stuff, and then even he came around and said, you know what, this Sean Connery guy is pretty cool. I like him, actually. And he started. That's like Bond is part Scottish in the books because Ian Fleming came around on Sean Connery and said, I'm going to add that to the backstory, and so he made one of Bond's parents. Look at him. He's Scottish. So
he's just right. It's just he's so influential. The thing I love about him is that he is a great. When there's a lot of Cold War elements that go on in some of his films, primarily in From Russia with Love, and I mean, even the Thunderball to some extent, you could interpret some of the things in there as being very, you know, Cold War-esque, I guess, right? Am I crazy?
No, for sure. I mean, like the Thunderball. You talking about Thunderball, right?
Yeah,
like the whole movie's about like nuclear. You know, Armageddon.
Right. Like, that's what I know. I just wanted your confirmation that way. It didn't sound like an ass, you know.
No, for sure.
I thought we were on the same page, but yeah, it was. And so the thing that I like about that is that I think he does you know, we talked about Roger Moore playing the times well, and you know, that's something that Connery does really well is being a sign of the times, but at the same time being a like he has just such a classic and timeless appeal to him. So it's like you can look through the little window that is like, you know, his films and get a feel for what the world was like, I guess. And he's great at doing that. But then if you step back and look at the larger picture, it's like he you know, it is Bond. There's a timeless appeal to him.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think the only thing I can say negatively about Sean Connery's Bond, other than like some of the questionable, like problematic things he does sometimes, is his performance does lessen as the films go on.
And that's why he's my number 2. Yeah. Yeah,
like I mean, like particularly he does looks. I mean, like obviously behind the scenes stuff factored into this that we know about. Yeah. You Don't Live Twice, he is not about being in that movie. And then Diamonds Are Forever, he's very clearly there for the money. Like, I actually think he has a better performance in Never Say Never Again than he does in Diamonds Are Forever. I think better performance.
I actually think he does. This is weird. You want to talk about controversial opinion? I think he has better performance in Diamonds than he does in You Only Live Twice.
That's fair. I don't know if I don't know. I have to rewatch them. I have to watch them back to back to like sort of make an assessment.
I feel like he's, you know, having a little bit more fun in Diamonds.
I think so. I can't get past how bloated he is. He looks like an old man. He looks older in Diamonds than he does. And he looks older in Diamonds in 71 than he does in Never Say Never Again in 83. Like, at least he like actually worked out a little bit in Never Say Never Again. He's still an old man, but at least he doesn't look fat. And am I fat shaming Sean Connery now? Oh no.
Maybe you are.
But I mean, God. Jesus. Yeah, it was just like, I know the one scene where he like sort of takes his clothes off, he's about to have sex with, very casually about to have sex with Tiffany Case, and he sort of like hangs his clothes up and he's about to turn the light out and you can see his beer gut and it's just like, Jesus, Sean, like suck it in. At least suck it in for the scene. Like,
yeah, that is definitely the downside to his character, is like he's also another one whereas like as the films progress, well, actually, no. It's really like he hits Thunder. It's like after Thunderball, his performance just drops off a cliff. Like,
yeah, no, for sure. And I think that's really what it is. It's all behind the scenes stuff. Sean Connery was infamously a little petty towards Harry Saltzman and Cubby Broccoli.
Yeah.
So that factored into it, but. Sure. It's not like he was a worse actor. I think he wanted more meaty material, and the producers were sort of like, well, let's keep doing what works. And it's kind of a shame that they didn't do Majesties straight after Thunderball. I think that would have been
beyond perfect.
It would have given Sean Connery the material he wanted, which means he may have actually given a shit in it. Yeah, all that would have been really cool, but we'll never know.
Right. It's just the way the cards panned out there. But anyways, so Connery's my number 2. He's your number 3.
Yes.
I know what your number 2 is then.
Yes.
And your number 2 is my number 1.
Yes.
That is Daniel Craig, correct?
Correct. Yes, good guess.
All right. Cool. Yeah. It's very funny because your number 1 is very low on my list, but my number 1's like number 2 for you. And actually, let's do this. Let's talk about Timothy Dalton first, because it's a great segue into why I think Craig is better.
Oh man, I'll refute you on that. But not that Daniel Craig isn't amazing. Yes, Timothy Dalton is my number 1.
Sure.
If you've ever spoken to me for at least 5 minutes about Bond, you'll know that he's my favorite Bond because I always bring him up. I have an autographed photo of Timothy Dalton that sits on my desk, and I kiss it goodnight every night before bed. No, but I seriously do like think the world of Timothy Dalton as Bond. Mainly, I think it's mainly to do with my affinity for Fleming's Bond. I think Timothy Dalton is Fleming's Bond in every way.
He read the books.
He read the books. He would read the books on the set. Like, and one of my favorite stories from the production of License to Kill is Robert Davi and Timothy Dalton. We used to read Casino Royale together. Robert Davi would read Le Chiffre and Timothy Dalton would read Bond, and they would just sort of like, because they wanted to inject that like shadowy mirror image of each other aspect of those two characters into their characters, into Sanchez and Bond. And it's just like, that is so fucking cool. It's so cool that he went ahead and read all the books, and he was a fan of the books. But it's even cooler that he had such respect for the material that he would, like, in true Shakespearean fashion, he was treating Bond the way you would treat Othello or Hamlet or anything like that. And I just think that's so cool and it's so admirable. And it really shows in his performance. He's got such an intensity that I think people had forgotten Bond is supposed to have after the Roger Moore era. And so it was a nice palate cleanse almost. Like, because, I mean, as much as I love Roger Moore, it was coming off of the kind of the cartoonishness of that and straight into what is essentially a great 80s Cold War story in The Living Daylights.
Which I would say that's his best performance. I actually liked him more in that than I did in License to Kill.
I don't know if maybe I don't know. I prefer License to Kill. I'm sorry, The Living Daylights 2, License to Kill.
As a movie?
As a movie, yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with you too. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think I don't know. There's something about his performance in License to Kill that I can't decide if I like which better. But
yeah, it's a little tricky. Yeah,
he's so consistent too. That's the thing.
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
That like there are certain elements like there was supposed to be one. That's another thing. I'm just gonna gush. There's supposed to be a deleted scene of Timothy. Like, they tried to insert a Roger Moore moment essentially, where Timothy Dalton was going to in the middle of the bizarre chase through the city streets of what's the name of the city that they're in?
Wait, in which film?
In the Living Daylights. I should remember in the Middle East anyway. Right after he assassinates Pushkin.
Okay.
And while he's running from the police. Well, he pretends to assassinate Pushkin. He's running from the police, and they were going to do the Roger Moore bit where he sort of like sits on a carpet that's on a clothesline, and it slides down the line. It looks like a flying carpet, and it's so goofy. And they basically decided this doesn't like Timothy Dalton had a say into it, and they said like, this doesn't fit. Like this interpretation doesn't work.
No, not at all.
And they cut it, and I'm like, good for them for having they had the sensibility, and good for Timothy Dalton for standing up for what he thinks is his, I guess, interpretation of the role. For sort of just drawing the line and saying, humor isn't my Bond's thing. We can do some lines, but that's not really what I'm about when I'm Bond. And because in the books, humor isn't really a big part of Bond. There's like a sardonicness to him, but that's about it. Everything about him I love so much. And I think I know where you're going to go with this with Daniel Craig sort of refining that in a way. I think Daniel Craig. I mean, should I get into this now or should I wait?
It's up to you because I mean that's kind of going off your interpretation of Craig, but you can talk more Dalton if you want. Though,
I guess I'm just trying to think. I'm going to keep gushing. It just everything about him is
it's fine. Well, and then I'll chime in a little bit because I really do like Timothy Dalton. I think he is, if anything, he's probably the most consistent. Even at 2 films.
Yeah.
Only because it was
such an impression for someone who only did 2 films too.
Yeah, that's the difference between him and Lazenby. Granted, Lazenby was only 1, but it's, Timothy Dalton only had 1 more film, and he had already made a very, very impressive mark coming off of The Living Daylights. That's where you go, okay, yeah, that's this guy gets it. He gets the character. He had a very hardened edge to the character. He understood the psyche, the intensity of him, and like you were mentioning, it was such a great what do you call it? It was such a great palate cleanser after the Roger Moore era because it was like, holy crap, we can take Bond seriously again. Yeah. Oh my gosh, like we can have a solid Cold War thriller that's very much in the same vein as From Russia with Love, only set during the 80s, and arguably, have Timothy Dalton on his first outing give, maybe on the same level a performance as Sean Connery did in From Russia with Love. It's just
for sure, yeah. I think it's yeah.
Or go ahead.
I was gonna say one thing you mentioned when you talked about it just reminded me, and this is going to also tie into Daniel Craig as well. I think Daniel Craig and Timothy Dalton, more so than any of the other actors on this list, and the reason they're my top 2, is they both treat Bond as a character more so than as an icon. I think Sean Connery had elements of the character in there, but he was also very much a wish fulfillment kind of role, and which is great, and that's not a disparaging term. But there are elements of his character that are intentionally very sort of mysterious, so that you can fill in the blanks yourself and insert yourself into it a little bit. He's a male, like, wish fulfillment character.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely, and Connery, on top of being a character, is like it's just kind of hard to not be. He's an icon because he is just,
then also, the time has sort of affected our perspective on him in that way as well. But Daniel Craig, and then especially Timothy Dalton, in my opinion, there is, I mean, not even especially Daniel Craig as well, but they are, they embrace all of the very minute details of the character that sort of make him less of a caricature and more of a character. And like the little, like the nuances and the what's the word I'm looking for? Like the idiosyncratic, like, sort of mannerisms that make him more than just an action hero that we can sort of project yourself onto and make it, this is James Bond. James Bond is he's got bad qualities, he's got good qualities, he's a well-rounded character. And I think Timothy Dalton is responsible for the reason we even look at Bond in cinema like that, because I don't think you could get Daniel Craig's Bond without Timothy Dalton first, like, blazing the trail.
Yeah.
Like, because he really made Bond a believable character again. And so, I love him so much.
No, and I have grown to have great respect and admiration for him as well. There's no knock on him. I mean, I know he's number 4 on my list. It's just I have a relationship with Pierce Brosnan's Bond, like it's kind of like deep. It's like ingrained in me. Like, he is just, I look at something, like a piece of, like you say, he's a Coca-Cola Bond. It's like, you see, it's like, oh, that's James Bond. I didn't get that with Dalton, but I think that Dalton's performance is just so true to the character in a way that we hadn't seen before. And like you said, it opened the floodgates for what would eventually be Daniel Craig's Bond. Yeah. I just happen to think that Daniel Craig took it up a few notches, and is why that is my number 1.
There you go.
Daniel Craig just is the character. You know what I'm saying? Like, he is in the interpretation. He's not the biggest lady killer. Sure, he's not. But you get a taste for the lady killer that he could be in Casino Royale, especially when you see him seducing Demetrius's wife. You see how he's trying to finagle his way with Vesper, but in a way that's truly romantic.
I love how many times in that movie he constantly comments on the fact that he goes for married women.
Yes, yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's like they never show you the womanizer he is, but you understand that he has those attributes to him. So we don't get a whole lot into that aspect. We definitely get the badass action hero. I mean, that fucking chase scene, the in Madagascar, which is hands down one of my favorite chase scenes of all time. Like, of any film, period. Not just James Bond, of all time. That is one of my favorite chase scenes. It's so well choreographed. And I think Daniel Craig is incredible in the parts of the scene where he is in there. He just... Oh, yeah. The intensity and the raw grit and strength and brutality of his character, it's like... this is a guy who just got promoted to 00 status. He's going fucking balls to the wall, all out. He's gonna do his job, and he will probably kill you in the process because he can. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
sure. There's just that intensity and brutality to the character that I love. That I think is essential to the first outing. That is then refined over the next the sequential films. And when we get to Spectre, we do get a little bit more suave, what do you call it, Craig? You know what I'm saying? Like, he's intense. He's got the brutal nature to him, which is just, a part of his interpretation.
Yeah. His interpretation's unique in that it evolves very naturally through the narrative.
Which is what I love about it. He matures as a character. You know what I'm saying? Like, we get the first, like, brutal interpretation, and then, like, as it goes, as his films progress, it's like he he becomes more aware of what this job entails and how it affects him mentally and emotionally and all of the things that it's taken away from him. You know, it not only took away Vesper, it took away M, who was like a mother figure to him. And now it's brought in this estranged stepbrother or whatever that is like fucking up his life and whatnot. And so, you know, it's like he's aware of the sacrifices that he's had to make, and you see it take a toll on him that I don't think is present in the Dalton films. You know, you get a feel for the job affecting the character. You definitely do, and that's more present in License to Kill, I think, than it is in the Living Daylights, because that's a pretty central theme in that movie. But it's just what Craig built off of what Dalton had already established, and what Dalton established was you can be a more grounded Bond. You can be set in the real world. You can be intense. We can have a dark edge to it. Craig took that, made it his own, and actually bumped it up a few notches and created a character evolution to the likes that the franchise has just never seen before.
And I would definitely agree with that wholeheartedly. I think what he did with terms of evolving the character and really making him, the fact that he's able to evolve the character and change his interpretation of the character as the story necessitates, and still be recognizably the same character is really a testament to the writing, but also to Daniel Craig's ability and his understanding of the character. I totally agree. I think
he gets it, you know,
because you could just as easily botch that and have it just like, oh, he plays a different version of the character in every single one of his movies. But there is such a through line because Daniel Craig is I think is so dedicated to the role, and this is why it pisses me off when people say he's like, you know, he hates it or whatever. He is so dedicated to the role in terms of, he made those comments, but I mean, like his performance speaks more than any of those comments could. The fact that he is able to keep the character consistent but malleable is so like amazing. It's a kind of like again going back to Timothy Dalton, that's like a level of dedication and respect for the role that you don't see in a lot of these action movie roles. You know what I mean? Like there's no reason that, like, if you look at James Bond as an action property, you're like, oh yeah, why would you even bother trying? Like, just go in there, do some action stunts, say some quips, drink martinis, have sex with girls, drive fast cars. That's it. You know what I mean? That was the character.
Just copy what Sean Connery originally did.
Exactly. You know? Which, or you know, like Pierce Brosnan did. No.
He had more to it than that.
I'm just giving you shit. I'm giving Pierce shit. We're good friends. But you could just as easily just say, like, why bother? And into Pierce Brosnan's credit, he wanted to do a lot more in-depth stuff, but the writing just wasn't there.
Sure.
Like he begged for them to do more in-depth stuff with The World Is Not Enough. And he got, to an extent, he got a little bit more of it, but just not as much as he would have liked.
Right.
And not as much as I think he deserved. But going back to Daniel Craig, the fact that he was he and Timothy Dalton, like the fact that they looked at this role and said, you know what, I could do it this way, but I don't want to. I want to explore the character. So I am a dedicated actor, and I respect the role enough that I'm going to treat this as though I would treat any high-profile acting role.
Right.
And that is so cool. And I think that's what going forward. I don't know. You can go back from that now. Like,
no, I agree. The precedent has been set. And here's the thing. You know, I think if Dalton had the same amount of films as Craig, then Pierce Brosnan's interpretation would have been different as a result. He would have been forced to follow in the footsteps. But because Dalton kind of had like a random 2-off shoot there, Brosnan was able to kind of like...
Yeah.
Right, yeah. And so Brosnan was able to like go back to, you know, a more traditional Bond, but still his own. But then after Die Another Day... they had to fucking reinvent the franchise, man, because that movie was just such a disaster on so many different levels, other than even Pierce Brosnan.
I mean, obviously, like, not even just. I think the timing was better for this, I guess. Like,
it was like the post 9/11 world. There was a lot of
the big thing, like, because you couldn't do something stupid like Die Another Day, even though it came out in 2002, it was in production before 9/11, and so, you know, like, after that is sort of like making like quips when you kill terrorists isn't really funny anymore. Like it's kind of serious. And so I think the times allowed Timothy Dalton's interpretation. It's helped it age really well. And on top of that, it allowed Daniel Craig and the franchise as a whole to sort of just embrace that, all that stuff that is in the books. I would say the one thing that I think differentiates Daniel Craig from Timothy Dalton in my mind is I think Timothy Dalton is straight up from the book. And I think Daniel Craig is to an extent straight up from the book. But I also think there are elements of like Sean Connery and some of his later performances, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's really great. I'm really cool. Well, I think it's really cool they managed to tie it all in with his thing. So that's definitely not a slam against Daniel Craig. That's not the reason he's second over Timothy Dalton. I just have a preference for Timothy Dalton. They're both equally phenomenal.
Sure.
I just think, I think there is there's a slight classicness to Daniel Craig. This could even be to Timothy Dalton's detriment. Timothy Dalton never really had the classic sort of suaveness that Daniel Craig has managed to work in and not let that compromise his hard edge, which I think is really cool. And I think that's why we keep talking about this every time we talk about the news. It's so important that Bond 25 does not forsake all of this because of a lukewarm reception to Spectre. Like, because hit home run and take this character to finish the progression you started in Casino Royale. You know, like who knows?
It just they just need to you're right. They just, to put a cap on all this, they just need to conclude the arc in a way that there is, like, obviously it's not all the ends aren't like tied up, because if they were, then Bond wouldn't continue in the franchise wouldn't continue, but in a way where Daniel Craig's story as James Bond has been told, because he's the first one to really go linear like this. And let's actually make it linear. Let's finish it off here. So I agree with you. I think it does have to be good. But anyways, just for me, Timothy Dalton is at 4 for a lot of the reasons, like I said. But also, I just I was never really drawn to those films growing up. Over time, I have been, and that's why I've come to appreciate him a lot more. And, I think there's a lot of room for him to go up on this list for sure. Yeah. The more I go back and rewatch, like, The Living Daylights and License to Kill. But unfortunately, I haven't had that relationship with him, so it's gotta grow.
And that's fair. I mean, I didn't love Timothy Dalton when I first watched him. My brother and I used to joke about him being the angry Bond. Like, we used to make jokes about how, like, he was constantly, like, this is like dumb, but like we used to joke about, like, what was Timothy Dalton like in real life? Like, what was his Bond like in day-to-day life? Yeah. And the punchline of all those jokes when we were kids was that Timothy Dalton's Bond would walk into a room and just be as aggressive as possible, no matter how mundane the situation is. Yeah, so it would be like, he would walk into Moneypenny's office, and then, like, she'd be typing on the typewriter while he spoke, and it would piss him off, so he'd slam his fist on the desk, and like, he'd just be needlessly aggressive. And so, I mean, when I first watched them, it was an acquired taste, so I totally understand. Sure. Like, but I have had that relationship now where it's like, I look back and I laugh at how, like, immature I was when I first watched those movies. I was like, 6. Right. It was like, I was a kid, and so. And now I've grown up watching them, and I've grown as I matured. I sort of grow to appreciate them. So, yeah, and that doesn't mean it's going to happen to everyone. Obviously, some people, it's just not their taste. But yes, I totally sympathize with needing to have a relationship with the character, with the interpretation, to truly appreciate it. Yeah,
right, for sure. All right, well, that will do it. That is our individual James Bond actor rankings. We'll go through them one more time. I'll do mine, then Brody, you can finish up with yours. My number 6 is George Lazenby. My number 5 is Roger Moore. My number 4 is Timothy Dalton. My number 3 is Pierce Brosnan. My number 2 is Sean Connery. And my number 1 is Daniel Craig.
Nice. And then mine, I won't say the numbers. I'll just say George Lazenby as the weakest, then Pierce Brosnan, and then Roger Moore, and then Sean Connery, and then Daniel Craig, and then finally as the strongest, in my opinion, Timothy Dalton.
There you go. And I think it's important to say that regardless of the placements on here, I think they all have done great jobs in their own regard, and they were perfect for their tenures as the James Bond. We haven't really had a bad actor play the role, which is pretty fortunate.
Yeah, let's hope we can keep that trend going.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Well, yeah, that's going to do it for this week's episode of The Words Are Not Enough. Hopefully you've enjoyed us discussing the Bond character and any of the news we discussed up there. Be sure to leave your comments in the comments section below, your thoughts and opinions on everything we discussed, of wherever you're watching it, whether it be iTunes, YouTube, iHeartRadio, wherever you're listening to this podcast. Be sure to let us know your thoughts and opinions. It really would mean a lot to us. And then also, if you could take the time to give us a rating or review, that really helps us get noticed and get the show more, get more people talking about the show and getting it in front of more listeners. We love doing this show, and we hope you enjoy listening to it. So if you could just do us that little kind favor, rating, review, share it with your friends, that would be incredible.
That'd be awesome.
We're gonna have another we're gonna have a show next week. Don't know what we're gonna be talking about yet because the news, and whatnot, but you can be on the lookout for that. But if you missed it, be sure to go back and check out our Halloween special. And I say Halloween special loosely because you could really listen to it at any other time. It was our first breakdown of one of the films. We talked about Live and Let Die. We talked about its cultural impact, the movie in general, gave our overall thoughts on it. It was about like a 2-hour-long discussion. Go check it out. It is quality stuff. We're hoping to do that with all of the Bond films in the near future, but we started it out with Live and Let Die. So be sure to go listen to that. And then if you want to hear us talk about stuff that isn't pertaining to James Bond, go check out the Men vs. Movies YouTube channel. Movie reviews, a couple other movie-centric stuff in there. We did a ranking of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I'm also going to be having a review out there for Murder on the Orient Express. So if you're interested in any of that stuff, go check it out on Men vs. Movies on YouTube. And then lastly, if you guys like us and what we have to say, actually, Brody, where can everyone find you?
Well, you can all find me on Twitter, which I increasingly spend more and more of my time at B. I nearly said it wrong. I haven't said it wrong in ages.
It doesn't matter. It's in the description. So.
It's in the description, but I would feel like a fool if I said it wrong after all this time. At Brody Saravelli. Come listen to my musings. It's fun.
There you go. All right. And if you like me specifically and you like what I have to say, you can give me a follow on Twitter at Griff Schiller. All of the social media information is in the description here, along with our show notes and whatnot. So if you need to know how to spell any of that, it's in there. And until next week, we'll catch you then. Take care. Have a great weekend.